Mute.
Morning, folks. Laura, I might just do the same as yesterday, just in advance of starting and just test my presentation. Can you see that okay? I don't know if Laura, Stephen is on the call. Can you let me know? Thanks, David. I can see your thumbs up
Fine,
there.
yeah.
Thanks, Stephen.
Yes.
I'm just going to put it in full screen mode to make sure it's not in kind of presentation or in notes mode. Is that in presentation mode on your side?
It's in the notes,
in the notes.
mode, yeah.
Okay, I'll just see. Can I change that?
The three little dots there, you can click switch screens. Three little dots. Down, further down.
Oh, here is it,
Yeah.
David?
I think if you click on that, it might give you the option to switch screens.
Hide presenter view.
Screen, don't below it.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. So, show hide ink markup, is that it?
Good question.
Actually, I clicked on something yesterday and it seemed to change it.
Go back again to those three dots, Geraldine, and yeah, and hide presenter view. Try that.
That probably has that done
That works, yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. Have we many online, Sophie?
32.
32. Okay. I might just start because it's just after 11 and I'm conscious of people's times. But just in advance of starting, actually, just to make everybody aware that the session is being recorded and it will be uploaded to gov.ie together with the FAQs. And also, we would ask that all questions come in via the chat facility, just to allow us to convert them then into the FAQ document. So Sophie will be copying them from the chat session and including answers and then publishing them on gov.ie with the recording of this morning's presentation and Q&As. I'll just start now. So first of all, my name is Geraldine Crean and thanks for joining us today. I would have replaced Thurlock O'Brien, who last September in the unit and one of the areas of my responsibility is to oversee the Connected Hubs 2022 funding call. I'm working with Laura, Sophie, Stephen on the Connected Hubs call. So we're a relatively small team, and I just want to highlight that because in terms of managing the call for the year, it's important that you would send your queries to connectedhubs@drcd.gov.ie, and feel free to reference either myself, Laura, Sophie or Stephen, depending on what the issue is about. But we would ask that the query goes to the shared mailbox because it helps everyone. We'll be able to reply quicker because the mailbox is covered even when people is on leave. So looking first at the objectives of the fund. So first of all, the presentation this morning is going to cover a number of different areas. We're going to look at the key objectives of the fund. We're going to look at the timelines, and then some issues that came up over the course of last year's call and have come in even close to the presentations. So there was queries on matched funding and voluntary labour, for example. We look at the categories as well in terms of the categories changing from 2021 to 2022. And I'm going to spend a bit of time looking at the appendices because they're new to the application process for the 2022 call. But the main part of this morning's session will be for Q&As that you might have on the scheme for 2022. So I'm quoting here from the scheme outline, and it's exactly the same as last year in that the main objectives of the fund is to develop and leverage the capacity and the quality of existing remote working facilities and BCPs. But the logic behind this is that we would envisage the occupancy figures increasing as we progress to going back into the office. And we need to make sure that our remote working hubs have the capacity to cater for remote workers nationwide. You'd be aware that it is a 5 million allocation, and I've put a note in there that it's not appropriate for the building of new hubs or the regeneration of vacant buildings. If you have proposals in relation to new hubs or regeneration of vacant buildings, they're proper to the T&V scheme and the RRDF, or the RRDF, I should say. Key timelines. I want to call these out because I suppose we're a small team and we're planning around making an announcement. You can see here in Q2. So the funding announcement, that is. So the announcement for the call went out last week, the 21st of February. We've asked for expressions of interest to be submitted before close of business tomorrow, the 4th of March. To date, Sophie was telling me this morning, we've received over 100 expression of interest, and that's pretty substantial. Last year we had 118 successful applicants to the call. We received over 150 applications. It could be exceeded this year, or that number could be exceeded because it's quite a high number of expressions of interest. But again, I will say, if you do intend to apply for the call in 2022, please do submit an expression of interest because we do need to plan resources to ensure that we can keep within these timelines for everybody's benefit. So I'm going to call out specifically as well that we'd ask for queries, and it goes back to resources and making sure that your queries can be answered on time. We'd ask for queries to be completed and submitted before Friday the 25th of March, so a week in advance of the closing date. And that's to allow us to answer your queries and give you the time to submit the application before the closing date. And then the project completion deadline this year is the Friday 11th of November. And again, we're aiming to adhere to the timelines leading into that so that we can achieve that project completion deadline requirement. The key changes to this year's call, there's a new qualifying condition. So this is the second year of the call. So the new qualifying condition is where the applicant's Connected Hubs 2021 project is incomplete, and unless the department has granted an exemption in advance, the proposal won't qualify basically. So you do need to have your 2021 project complete in order to submit a proposal for the 2022 call and for it to go through to be evaluated. The hub categories is a second change, but it's very slight, and it's to make it clearer in terms of the type of hub that you have. So we've two main categories. We have a commercial or for-profit hub, and the name in itself is self-explanatory, but it's also included in the scheme outline. Rather, there's a footnote included in the scheme outline as to what that specifically is. And then we have a social enterprise hub. And a social enterprise hub, and again, this is in the scheme outline, is an enterprise whose objective is to achieve a social, societal, or environmental impact rather than maximising profits for its owners or shareholders. And in the case of the 2022 call, the majority of BCPs would be considered social enterprises, just to make that point. And then there's a third category, other not-for-profit hub. So again, to cater for those hubs that don't come under the social enterprise category, but are not-for-profit hubs. Then VAT inclusive, exclusive. So for the purpose of the 2022 call, we're presuming applicants are VAT registered. So we wouldn't repay VAT costs for 2022 applicants unless they submit a letter from Revenue that provides that they are not VAT registered. And in that case, we would require the letter with the application form, and we'd expect you to include your VAT costs on the application form as well. So they will be in the appendices, which I will go through before the end of the presentation. So just to note that the presumption is you're VAT registered and you'd include your costs excluding VAT. If you aren't VAT registered, you would need to get a letter from Revenue to state that, and then include the costs, including VAT, in the appendices. So there's no change here. This looks at matched funding and cash contribution requirements. It's in section 8 of the scheme outline, but we did have questions on this during the year. So it's just to clarify what's required around match funding and cash contribution. So in the case of commercial or for-profit hubs, there's a match funding of 10% of the total project cost that has to be provided in the form of a cash contribution. And then in the case of social enterprise hubs and all other not-for-profit hubs, match funding of 10% must be provided, but there's a minimum of 5% cash contribution required there. So then the balance, the other 5% needs to be provided from another source, or it can be provided as a cash contribution if that part is optional. But there's a minimum 5% cash contribution required for social enterprise or other not-for-profit hubs. The third row there is the community dividend, and this was referred to as an in-kind contribution last year, but we just want to make it very clear what this is. It's applicable, first of all, to only the commercial or for-profit hubs, and it's where a community dividend to the value of 25% of the approved grant over 3 years is required for the commercial or for-profit hub. The scheme outline provides some examples. So it could be, just to call out one, it could be, for example, allowing a community group access to your hub, X number of nights a week for meetings, etc. And that's completed, just to, again, highlight the fourth column there. That's completed via Form 1 or Form 2. So the Word documents, it's nothing got to do with the cost of the project. It's kind of an added benefit that the hub will be providing to the community groups, or in whatever form that is a community dividend, and it's provided via Form 1 if it's a single hub, or via Form 2 if it's a multi-hub. And then the match funding and the cash contribution is relevant to the total project cost and is provided via the B1 or B2 appendices, depending on which type of hub you are. So Connected Hubs 2022 does permit the use of voluntary labour up to a maximum of 5% of the cost of a line item, where applicable. The maximum allowed for voluntary labour or unpaid work is €14 per hour, and the line items and the relevant details must be included in Appendix A, and then the total amount is included via Appendix B1 or B2. And I'll go through that once I come to the appendices, just to explain a little bit more on how the voluntary labour is recorded in the application. These are the categories of funding for 2022. So it's broadly in line with the 2021 categories, and these are based on feedback from the various different stakeholder groups. The significant change is the addition of the podcast and creative studio. So that was seen as a need kind of across all groups for Connected Hubs 2022 to support. Other elements are, we'd say, sustainability, green elements. So that's a general category, and we really want the hubs to determine what their needs are, and we'd expect this to vary somewhat across the hub. So we're not calling out specific items, but depending on your hub, you might have a specific sustainability or green element requirement. And just on that, we did receive suggestions in terms of a requirement for current support, current funding support, but as we're a capital fund, we wouldn't be able to support current costs. Now there is, just to call out, similar to last year, we do have a project management costs that we would cover, but it's to a maximum of 10% of the total project cost that will be permitted. And it's similar to last year, but we have detailed this in the scheme outline. So it's page 12, and we've said project management costs, and we specifically said professional costs, for example, architect or solicitor's fees and administration costs associated with the proposal will be allowable. But as I said there, it's a maximum of 10%. We are looking at the current costs that you are incurring and the issue around that in terms of sustainability. You'd be aware possibly that we're looking at a strategy for Connected Hubs, so it is something that's at the forefront, and we are working with our colleagues in the WDC to progress that, just to make you aware of that. It is something we are looking at. This is the appendices document I had spoke about there. So this is Appendix A, and every hub will complete, every application rather will have an Appendix A completed with it. The difference between a single site or a single hub application and a multi-hub application will be that the first column will only have one hub name, obviously for a single hub application, and it will have 3 to 5 for a multi-hub application. And to highlight the voluntary labour piece, so basically you can see here, and it's not very clear actually, but the appendix, it's available on gov.ie, it's much clearer, but just to call out, this is basically a breakdown of the costs by line item and category. So you're inserting your line item and you're aligning it with whichever category is most appropriate. And just to note, the categories that are called out in the scheme are included, but there's also an other option here. And we wouldn't expect that every line item that you have is going to fall into one of the 14 categories. They're kind of a guidelines only, and if there is something else that falls under the other category, we'd be interested in seeing that obviously as well. Coming back to the voluntary labour description line is the second last column, and then the cost associated with that. The example that I've given at the previous information sessions is, for example, if a line item is to renovate a particular room in a hub, there might be a voluntary labour where somebody has volunteered to paint the room, and the associated cost with that then would go into the last column, and a description of that would go into the second last column. Bearing in mind, for a multi-hub application, you'd have maybe 3 to 5 hubs. This total cost is for the multi-hub application, but for each individual hub it will vary depending on the line items and the hubs associated with it. And that will be relevant to Appendix B1 or B2, where Appendix B1 and B2, let me just go on to the next slide. So Appendix B1 and B2 is for either the commercial or for-profit hub, or the social enterprise or not-for-profit hub. And here it will be completed for a single hub application. Basically, we'll have one of these, but for a multi-hub application, for each single site within a multi-hub application, we will have one of these within the multi-hub application package. So in the case of the voluntary labour, and I'll just flick back here. So here, if we had, for example, 3 hubs and only two hubs had voluntary labour items listed, then for them 2 hubs, there's a line here, voluntary labour as per Appendix A, and we'd expect to see the total voluntary labour cost for that individual hub in this cell here. And I would encourage, I won't run through every field in the appendix. There is very good instructions done up with the appendices package as to what's needed in what cell. So I would encourage you to look at the appendices the application forms themselves, which is Form 1 for the single hub, Form 2 for the multi-hub, and then the appendices packages. Appendix A needs to be submitted with every application, and either Appendix B1 or B2 for a single hub, and then there'll be multiple B1 and B2s dependent on the type of hubs within a multi-hub application. But I would encourage you to look at it, because I'd expect people to have queries, and we do want to make sure that we can answer the queries in advance. And as I said at the start, the earlier them questions come in, the better position we are to answer them on time to allow you to submit your application. And on that note, I'll open the floor to questions, and bear with me. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see the
Geraldine, if
Yeah.
I can just clarify, I think we skipped it on one of the earlier slides. One of the main change from last year is the maximum number of hubs that you can put as part of a multi-hub application.
Thanks, Laura.
I'm not sure we went through that. If you just want to go back on this point, maybe.
Yeah, you're right. I may have skipped over that. Thank you. Okay, so as Laura said there, and this table, and I did fly through it maybe. So basically, one of the big changes is for the multi-hub applications for 2022, we've limited it to 5 hubs that can be within the multi-hub application, so 5 single sites, and then there is a minimum of 3 required as well. So each multi-hub application will be between 3 and 5 hubs. But there is the option to submit more than one multi-hub application, just to make that point as well. And I'm just going to flick over to the chat here to see the questions. Okay, so Dora has asked, if you have 2 hubs located in 2 different parts of the county, but under one company, is that 1 application or 2? I would say that's 2 applications, but you'd reference the 1 company, you know, maybe highlight in both applications that there's another application gone in, Dora. Nora's asking, are the public procurement thresholds excluding VAT regardless of whether or not an organisation is VAT registered? Are the public procurement thresholds? It should be in line with the EU and the national procurement guidelines, Nora. If it's in terms of the application that you're asking, but just to clarify, are you asking in terms of public procurement or the application, Nora? I might just ask you to come in there.
So I suppose I'm just asking in terms of, we'll have a mix of organisations that are VAT registered and not VAT registered. So I'm just wondering if the public procurement thresholds, like say, you know, there's 5 grand and 25 grand. Those prices are generally ex-VAT because the VAT can be claimed back. But in the instance of organisations that aren't VAT registered, are the thresholds the same?
I have to come back to you on that, Nora.
Yeah, that's okay. That's no
just
problem at
make
all.
a note of that.
Thanks.
No problem. Thanks, Nora. Is CCTV an allowable line item? I think that has come in another form as well, and we've advised that we'll come back on that, but we'll add that to the FAQs, Nora, as well, and we'll have a response to that. Liam is in there about the expo that Connected Hubs.ie are holding. Liam, I'll hand the mic over to you if you want to speak on that.
Okay, thanks, Geraldine. Yes, tomorrow week, instead of our usual Connected Hubs network meetup, we're having a dedicated expo where suppliers and providers who cater to the hub sector can showcase what they do, and you as hub owners and managers can move from breakout room to breakout room to chat to the various providers and suppliers. So it's to help you prepare your applications for this fund, and also if you're contemplating doing work outside this fund as well, it's a chance to meet relevant suppliers and providers. Anybody who's already on our mailing list for Connected Hubs will receive the invitation as per usual. But if you're not on our mailing list for our Friday network meetups, email me at liamhoran@wdc.ie. And to emphasize that this is the providers and suppliers showcasing to you, not hubs showcasing to anybody else. You're the browser on this occasion, so you don't need to worry about preparing anything for the event. Just turn up and see who you want to talk to. We will publish beforehand a list of all exhibitors and what they do to make it easy for you to plan your trip around the virtual expo. Okay. So any queries, you can message me on liamhoran@wdc.ie. Thank you. Thanks, Geraldine.
Thanks, Liam. Colin, sorry, somebody's coming in there.
It's Sean Kilmere Hub, right? And one of the questions I had was in relation to the access control system. There was talk about doing not doing a system unless everybody had the same type of system, so it could be eventually used for the connected hubs. Is that system in place, or is it being worked on now?
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, I was about to ask. Yeah, thank you.
I can come in there, Sean. If you are going out to tender for an access control system, just check back the policy we're in place at the moment. We're going to be building integrations for a number of access control systems, max of 5 at the moment. We can't build an integration for every one of them. So what we'll do is we'll circulate that list. But also, if you come across a different system that's not on that list, if you share what's the API spec of that with us, we can check with Baseworks, our provider, to see that it's compatible. So I'll send a note around on that, Geraldine, for you to put up in the FAQs.
Thanks, Stephen. That'd be brilliant. Yeah, I think it's came up on the previous sessions as well.
Yeah. Sorry, one more question, please. Obviously, having applied before last year, does one need to submit a business plan again for second round?
Yes, they would, Sean. Things may have changed, but it's in the scheme outline. A 5-page business plan is required for commercial hubs. Yeah. Okay, so Colin Keane has a question. 10% of evaluation criteria is for collaboration, demonstrate a framework for coordination and collaboration between the applicants and other stakeholders. Could you possibly give examples of this? Thank you. We put that in the FAQ column, probably relevant to include for everybody. So that'll be up in the FAQs. Yvonne Gelsonen, where can we access information advice on fitting out remote working spaces and specification? You'll have to put that one in the FAQ. I'm not sure if WDC colleagues can come in on that, but happy to put it in the FAQ, either Stephen or Liam. Sorry, I'll read out the question again.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, it's from Yvonne. Where can we access information advice on fitting out remote working spaces and specification? And actually the expo that Liam mentioned there would be possibly relevant.
That'd be a good place to go, Geraldine. But whoever put in the question there, sorry, I'm just struggling to find the chat button. If they wanted to attend our sessions there, we can handle those kind of questions there at those fortnightly sessions.
Okay, so that's Yvonne Gelson. And Yvonne, are you happy enough with that, Yvonne? Or do you have any on the expo?
Yeah, absolutely. That's fine. Thanks, Geraldine. Thanks, Liam.
We can put you in charge of some people who have gone through that.
That would be great. Great.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Yvonne.
Geraldine, I think you're on mute.
I am. Thank you, Laura. I just realised it just notified me there. So Mandy has a question. What is the minimum amount of quotes per supplier or provider for a service? There's been a few questions similar to that, Mandy. It's in line with the EU and national procurement guidelines. What we have said is we'll do up a 1-pager on procurement to give people direction on that in terms of where to go to see them guidelines. So it'll be in the FAQs, or it'll be attached to the FAQs rather. Derek Blackweir to everyone, have the application, but where are Appendix A and B templates? We can put that in the FAQs as well, Derek, but they are up on gov.ie, so they should be with the Form 1 and Form 2, but the FAQ responses will be going out early next week, and we include it in that. Could you go through the de minimis limits? Sure. So the de minimis is basically, it's where public funding that comes under the state aid regulation, it can't exceed rather 200,000 over a 3-year period. And just to say the 3 years, year 3 for the case of the Connected Hubs 2022 call will be the 1st of January through to the date of the announcement, or award rather. So if you were to be awarded, for example, 50,000 in the beginning of May, the 50,000 is included in the calculation, and any other public money that's state aid money would also be included, that you would have been awarded in 2022 up to that date. And then years 1 and 2 will be calendar years 2021 and 2020. So they're the 3-year period that you're looking at, and it's any public money that's state aid, that's governed by state aid. That's the money that's included in the calculation. So it can't exceed 200,000. If you're at the 200,000 limit, including the Connected Hubs funding, then that's fine. But if it's above that, then you would be in breach of the state aid requirements. Then from Don, I'm not sure if that's a surname or not, but the question is, are Baseworks providing discounted access control systems? I might just ask Stephen to come in there.
No, Baseworks don't deal in access control systems. They provide the platform. There's loads of companies out there doing access control systems, and then what we're trying to do is, for a limited number of them, provide an integration or ensure that at some point the access control system can be integrated. And that's down to what's called an API and how and what level or standard that API is at.
Yeah,
Okay.
Thanks for clarification, Stephen. I mean, are any of the suppliers, rather than Baseworks, I shouldn't have said, are any of the suppliers offering discounted access control systems to hubs?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Apologies, I might have been on mute there. Sophie has included the link in the chat there to gov.ie. Sophie, am I correct to say that's the link that will include the appendices for the previous question, or the earlier question? Yeah, great,
Yeah.
thanks. Perfect.
There's a number of people who are potentially going to be leaders.
Somebody coming in there? Okay, so Stephen, you've answered the question there. Are Baseworks providing discounted access? And you're saying no. Baseworks do not deal with access control systems. That's fine. We'll add that to the FAQs. Yeah, so Ronan has asked, this grant funding is for hubs that already exist, correct? Yes, Ronan, correct. Is there separate funding to create new hubs? Yeah, so I would have called out there the T&V and the RRDF funding, and their schemes is specifically for new hubs and also for the renovation of buildings that might be converted and cater for remote working hubs as well. Now, we would be involved in the evaluation process because obviously it's relevant to the National Hub Network, but the funding stream are available for hubs that basically are being built or buildings that are being renovated to cater for hub usage. Margaret Gray, is leader funding included? Well, when calculating de minimis, I believe that leader does come under de minimis, Margaret, but you would need to double check with leader. But again, we can include in the FAQs actually, and we can answer that for you. But anything that comes under state aid rules is included in de minimis. There's a few. Liam has asked for Yvonne to include her email so that you can be added to the mailing list there, Yvonne. I'm at the end of the questions there. So if anyone has any other questions, do add them in. If not, I might ask. Sorry, I see potentially Bree. Do you have your hand raised?
Thanks, Geraldine. I work with the Waterford City and County Council, and I suppose we put in a multi-hub application last year, and we're again looking to work on a multi-hub application and include more of our BCPs this time around, as well as our community enterprise centres. We're finding there's development support is probably the wrong word, but it's not just the infrastructure pieces, it's trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together better so that they can maximize the use of the facility for these communities. Is there any ability within this funding stream to look at that kind of support, Geraldine?
Just mute it again, Geraldine.
Thanks.
Mute, Geraldine.
Yeah, thanks, folks. The categories are called out in the scheme outline breach. Can you just give me a bit of detail? Are you talking about a plan, a bigger picture type of a plan? Is that what you're referring to?
Not as much. It's probably going in and working with some of these groups a little bit better. They have, say, the BCP, or they have the remote working room set up. But again, about, you know, maximizing its usage, you know, kind of looking at, okay, what pieces of infrastructure may be of use, how do they go about promoting themselves, how operationally what do they need to look at so that they can maximize it. You know, it's one thing having the room and having the facility, you know, the actual hard infrastructure. It's another piece maximizing that, we're finding, I don't know, around the country, and trying to look at how we could support those communities to maximize these assets now that they have in their community.
So is it specifically BCPs you're referring to there, Breach, did you say?
BCPs and community enterprise centres.
Okay.
No commercial operator.
I know for BCPs and I might just ask Laura to come in if she wouldn't mind. BCPs, there is a funding stream there where, you know, we're looking at various different streams that may be suitable for some BCPs, such as e-health or e-work, and there's two other streams as well. But Laura, would you mind coming in
Sure.
in terms of that question, because I think it's relevant. Now I'm talking about only from the BCP side, Breach, but wouldn't mind, Laura.
Yeah, sure. From what I understand, that would come under current funding, because it's more about, it's rather than buying them equipment, you want them to support them kind of like in training or workshops and things like this to help them develop their facilities. So I'm not sure that would come in under this fund. However, on the BCP side of the unit, so there's a whole other side to this unit who works on the BCP. There's a BCP strategy that's being developed this year, and the BBOs are going to be asked to kind of impart into this strategy. So that might be something you want to chat to your local BBO about, because that's definitely something that's been looked at. So now the BCPs have been like, you know, they have the broadband connection and all of this. Now we're really looking at, well, the BCP section is really looking at the development of those places, and there is a whole strategy that's being developed. So that might be something that is very, very relevant to what you're talking about there. So I would encourage you to talk to your broadband officer, and you can in turn feed that back to the department, and that can be part of, that can be looked at as part of the strategy, because across the country, I'm very sure you're not the only one that is looking at this. So that's definitely relevant, and that's what we're looking at as a next step for the BCP network. So that's definitely relevant, but I'm not sure that comes under this funding.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. Yeah, I'd agree. It wouldn't come under this funding. And what's also relevant is that we're developing, I'd mentioned there during one of the slides, we're also developing a national hub network strategy. So the second categories of hubs that you spoke about there, together with the BCPs, would likely come under that if there is a remote working element. So we'd be looking at it from two angles, but there's a strong linkage between the BCPs, obviously, and the connected hub network. Is that all right, Bridge?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think we have a few more questions here. Bear with me. Do you need to own the premises to avail of funding, or will leased premises be included? I'd recommend, there isn't a name on that question, but if you read the scheme outline, it references specifically the rules around property that's being leased. So to answer, the leased properties can be included, but if you just read the scheme outline, it kind of goes into the requirements around that. Dora, are EI capital grants excluded from de minimis? You would need to check that with Enterprise Ireland, Dora. It may depend on the specific grant. I'm not 100%, but You want to clarify that with EI to be sure. Okay, Derek is saying there, the links on the Connected Hubs website are info only, not templates. We can double check that, Derek, and include the relevant links in the FAQs.
Just on the gov.ie page, there is quite a bit of information about all the relevant documents and attachments. We'll stick the link again in the chat there, but you have the scheme outline, you have the application form, you have the appendices, so we'll just stick the link again. But if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, you should have them.
Thanks, Laura.
It repeats the same information. It's like an example, and then when you go into the templates, it's exactly the same information. That's all.
We might touch base with you after the call, Derek, to be sure that you can get access to them. If you want to pop your email into the chat, Derek, just so that we have a contact. John, our hub is set up but was not able to go live due to red tape. Okay, John. See, someone has a question. Same with just transition funding. This is from Mary. Is that included? So I presume you're referring to de minimis. Mary, I would recommend going to the funding source and double checking with them if you're not sure. John, can we qualify for this round? I think you have submitted a previous question. Okay, so our hub is set up but was not able to go live due to red tape, and then you're asking, would you qualify for this round? We'd need to see the proposal, John, so I would say submit an application and we'll take it from there. Dan O'Sullivan, are there any government frameworks that BCP managers can use as part of their procurement processes? It's in line with the EU and the national guidelines, John. So if there's any frameworks there, you're open to using them. Margaret is asking, when you mention existing hubs, are you referring to buildings which already exist or hubs in which people were already working remotely prior to this? We're referring to hubs that had a remote working element, Mary, Margaret, apologies, prior to this. So there needs to be a remote working element. That doesn't apply to PCPs rather. Broadband connection points is what the BCP abbreviation is for. And what they are is they're a public facility that has been provided with a high-speed broadband connection as that area waits for the national broadband plan and fibre to be rolled out to that area. So the areas in question are areas where the broadband plan is going to be delivered later rather than sooner, and hence the need for a fibre connection. And that's the facility of the public facility, basically, with the broadband connection. So the community is open to use that from there. I'm not sure if someone's coming in there or not, but you might just put your mics on mute because Stephen, your thing, she's asking if capacity building activities are allowed. I'm not sure what it's referring to there, Stephen, but if you want to come in.
No, that was in reference to a previous call there, I think.
Okay.
I was just interpreting, is that like a marketing type activity that was being asked? The question.
What is this Bridget's question, was it? Yeah.
I think it was, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Sophie. Sophie's put up a link there for broadband connection points. So the person that asked the question what they are, that link will explain it in a bit more detail. Ronan is saying we have an office hub with another building located nearby which requires extensive renovation but would form part of the same hub. Would this funding be applicable for extending the hub into that building that requires extensive renovation? You look at the scheme outline, Ronan, projects have to be complete by the 11th of November, and that's really what it comes back to. So if the works can be completed, and obviously we'd need to see the full proposal, it would need to be evaluated and come under the qualifying criteria. But the key thing is, I note that you're saying extensive renovation, and the key thing is it would need to be complete by the 11th of November. And Joanne, can you look at T&V and ORIS and Clore grants also in de minimis? Joanna, just to clarify, are you asking, do they come under state aid de minimis regulation? Is that your question?
Yes, Geraldine, that's it.
Okay, we can check on that for that side of the house and add it into the FAQs. It's no problem.
Thanks a million.
So Yvonne is asking, our hub was newly built during 2021 and is only open to the public this year. Can we still consider applying for fitting out the hub for remote working? It's a brand new facility. You want to email in the connected hubs because it depends on, Yvonne, when in 2021 and also in terms of where it's located and so on. But if you wanted to email connected hubs, if you want to email that query to connected hubs, please. So a question from John, again, like the surname. If I open a hub but it is not operational yet for 6 months, could I still qualify? There's exceptional circumstances in the noted in the scheme in terms of the 6-month requirement. So technically you could, but we would need to see the proposal. And it would depend on what hubs are nearby and so on. Okay, so I'm at the end there again. So I'll ask if there's any more questions. I'll give it a minute. It's now 11:45. I might just ask Laura, if you wanted to talk about the project completion process for 2021, because we probably have 2021 applicants on the call, and it might be a good use of time just to call that out.
Yeah, perfect. That's something that came up in the other 2 sessions, so I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of the same information. If you had applied for the 2021 call and you completed your project as of the end of last year, you would have received full funding from the department. So in order to receive the last tranche of your funding last year, you were asked to confirm to the department that your project would be completed by the end of the year. So in order to close off those projects now, I'm going to come back to you and you're going to have a short last step of kind of compliance to close off your project for last year. So as of last year, you said your project would be completed. Now I'm just going to ask you to confirm that your project has indeed been completed on time and in line with your application. So I'm very conscious that you're concentrating on your application for this year's goal. So I've made it as simple and as straightforward as possible for you to fill in. However, that needs to be sent back to the department because that will be kind of the last closing off piece of your project for last year, and that needs to be completed sooner rather than later. So the form is done. I'm just awaiting on one more check to be done, and it'll be issued either this afternoon or tomorrow if possible, and then there'll be a couple of weeks turnaround to send that back. But especially if you're planning on applying again this year, I would urge you to send that completion report from your last year's project as soon as possible. And that's just going to come in your way in the next day or so. So I just want you to be aware of it as well. So that's it.
Thanks, Laura. Great. Okay, there's no more questions in the chat, so I might just draw it to a close unless anybody has a question they would like to add. Okay. Thanks very much for your time, folks. And as we said, the Connected Hubs mailbox is there. We'll share the presentation online as well. And if you do have any queries, once you look at the scheme outline and the application forms and so on, do get them queries into us as soon as possible, because with leave and the small team, you know, we only have limited time and limited resources, and the aim is that we make that funding announcement towards the end of April, the beginning of May. And if we work together, I think we can do that. So yeah, thanks again for your time.
So sorry if I can just jump in. There's just a question that popped in the box there.
Oh.
Just about expression of interest. We don't need any information other than you telling us you're interested in the scheme. It's kind of, if you could give us an idea of the numbers of people that plan to apply. Again, to go back to Geraldine's point, so we can plan resources. So it's literally a one-liner. You can tell us that you're interested in applying, and that's all we need at this point.
Thanks, Laura.
And actually, just to add as well, so I had a look on the gov.ie page where we're talking. All the documents are there, so we'll pop the link again. There is sample templates with examples in them, but there's application appendices as well. So just make sure you have a look at all the documents there. Everything you need should be there, but if you have any queries, again, and Sophie's just after popping the link again in the chat there, if you want to have a look at this site, at this, this link to the gov.ie website, everything should be there. But if you have any queries, just drop us a line in the Connected Hub mailbox.
Okay, and I think it was John that had that question, or Derek, apologies, I think it was yourself, Derek, but yeah, as Laura said, if you still can't find what you need, drop us an email to Connected Hubs and we'll follow up. Okay, thanks everybody. I'll draw to a close.
Sorry, I'm just having a look again. There's questions popping in as we're trying to close.
Sorry.
The link to the FAQs, that will be sent. So we're planning on the videos we'll be uploading with the FAQ, hopefully early next week. And as soon as this is done, we'll just drop you a line just so you're aware of it, so you're not waiting on things to pop up. So yeah, we'll do this one. It's early next week. That's the end.
Okay, and I see Ronan has a question. Can you advise what percentage of applicants got funding in the last round? There was about 150 applicants, give or take, Ronan, and there was 118 successful applicants.
Was that?
And then Dan has asked, sorry, I'm not sure if somebody was coming in there or not, can the links to the FAQs be sent to attendees? There will be an email issued to attendees to let them know when the FAQs are available online. And Liam has just asked if Yvonne could pop her email address into the chat. And that's it. There's nothing else coming through there. I'm reluctant to. Yvonne, if you want to pop in your email address, or Liam, do you want to call out your email address if Yvonne sent it directly to you? Oh no, she has it in there. Apologies, I see it's gone in. Yeah. Okay. Thanks everybody. I'll draw to a close.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.